There is a comforting fiction we tell ourselves about the worst people in history. We like to think notorious serial killers are born evil, that they arrive in the world like broken machines, disconnected from normal human experience. But when you look closely at the early lives of men like Jeffrey Dahmer or Edmund Kemper, you don't find supernatural monsters. You find seemingly normal, mid-century suburban environments, hiding massive fractures. The specific, horrifying mechanics of their crimes, their modus operandi, were rarely random. They were literal translations of their parents' psychological torment. To understand why a killer chooses a specific victim or a specific weapon, we have to look back at the years spent behind closed doors, long before they ever picked up a blade. From the outside, Jeffrey Dahmer's childhood in Ohio looked unremarkable. Inside, the household was slowly disintegrating. His father chased a PhD and buried himself in work, while his mother consumed huge handfuls of pills to cope with severe depression. By age 10, Dahmer spent hours alone in a backyard hut, stripping flesh from roadkill and collecting their skeletons. Instead of seeing a glaring psychological warning sign, his father treated it as scientific curiosity, even teaching his son how to bleach and preserve the bones. The breaking point arrived when Dahmer was 18. His parents' marriage collapsed, and both of them moved out separately. They left no forwarding address, leaving their son entirely alone in an empty house. Dahmer internalized a terrifying, absolute rule from that isolation. Eventually, everyone leaves you. Between 1978 and 1991, Dahmer murdered 17 young men. He drugged them, strangled them, and hoarded their bodies. He didn't act out of sadism. He acted out of a desperate need to physically prevent anyone from ever leaving him again. His crimes functioned as an extreme, artificial solution to the total abandonment inflicted by his own parents. While Dahmer suffered from neglect, other future killers faced direct, relentless degradation, forcing them to internalize a profound sense of worthlessness. John Wayne Gacy grew up under an abusive, alcoholic father who regularly beat him and called him a sissy, stupid, and a failure. Gacy spent decades desperately trying to earn approval that never came. When he lured at least 33 young men to his home with promises of jobs, only to handcuff and torture them for hours, he was translating that childhood abuse. He was finally able to exert the ultimate power and control he was violently denied at home. On a remote California ranch, Edmund Kemper faced a different kind of imprisonment. When he was 8, his mother locked him in the basement every night. She constantly called him a weirdo and explicitly insisted that no woman would ever want him. As an adult, Kemper picked up and murdered 6 young female hitchhikers. His victim selection was highly specific. They were college students, the exact same women his mother worked with at UC Santa Cruz. He was deliberately hunting the exact demographic of women his mother claimed would reject him. His crimes were a direct retaliation to her psychological programming. In 1973, Kemper finally murdered his mother with a hammer while she slept, ultimately decapitating her. He destroyed the very thing that created him and immediately called the police to turn himself in. Both Gacy and Kemper's violent acts were extreme, physical rebellions against the narratives of worthlessness authored by their parents. In the most extreme cases, parental actions teach a child complete physical dehumanization. When Albert Fish was 5, his mother decided she couldn't afford him and abandoned him to a sadistic Washington, D.C. orphanage. In that orphanage, constant whippings were treated as public discipline. Fish discovered that watching other boys suffer triggered a profound excitement in him, wiring pleasure to the sight of pain while his mind was still developing. As an adult, Fish embedded needles into his own pelvis, beat himself with nail-studded paddles, and murdered at least 3 children. He spent his entire life chasing the twisted neurological high taught to him by his early caregivers. Henry Lee Lucas was born into extreme poverty in a dirt-floor cabin. His mother, Viola, forced him to witness her selling herself to strangers, beating him unconscious if he looked away or cried. To make more money, Viola dressed the young Henry in girls' clothes and sold him directly to her clients. This treatment taught Lucas that humans were merely objects, allowing him to discard his future victims without a second thought. Fish and Lucas did not spontaneously invent their savagery. They mirrored and magnified the sadistic disregard for human life they were raised in. Millions of people survive severe childhood trauma without ever committing acts of violence. The men who commit these atrocities bear absolute, sole responsibility for their actions. While the killers made the choice to act, the specific patterns of their violence were drafted in their childhood homes. If we ignore the terrifying power of parental influence, we limit our ability to understand how extreme criminal pathology actually forms. Every victim buried under a floorboard was someone's child, killed by a man whose own humanity was stripped away decades earlier by the people meant to protect him.